Hello everyone. This will be the generic grammar presentation for all the grade levels this week. With the link on this presentation, I will be sending the logical analysis sheet so that you can do this at home if you print it out at home. And if you don't have a printer, that's fine. You can just use a regular piece of paper and just reproduce what I've got here on the board. No problem at all. So this is a Montessori work called sentence analysis or logical analysis. The reason I'm doing it on the board like this today is to keep it simple for everyone. But there are a number of Montessori works that we have to teach this. Materials here is among my favorites. I love when it comes to dealing with adverbs, adverbial phrases, subjects and predicates. We've got predicate pieces here, subject pieces. I've got stuff for direct objects, indirect objects, adverbs. For example, this is an adverb of time when. Of course, adjectives, right? So we've got all sorts of materials that we usually use. But for right now, I'm going to go through the basics of how do you do sentence or logical analysis, basically all in the abstract. So 3rd and 4th graders, this is primarily for you, and 5th graders. 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, I'm going to encourage you to come up with 5 of your own sentences that involve some more complex grammar. So we're talking, subordinating conjunctions perhaps. We're thinking about gerunds, infinitives, participles, appositives, okay? But I'm going to do a simple presentation here, geared primarily as an introduction, but everybody needs to see this. In fact, I've given presentations to 7th and 8th graders with this, and they've needed review as well. So without further ado, I'm going to begin logical analysis. The premise behind this presentation is that every sentence has an action, a predicate, and every sentence has something doing the action, or a subject. The symbols that we use as the action, of course, is the red circle here. This is the symbol for a verb when we do parsing, or a sentence to symbol. It actually comes from the Montessori. It's the idea of the sun, and the sun gives energy to everything. The idea of the subject symbol here is based on the noun symbol, and the noun symbol is like based on the Great Pyramids of Giza, like a thing, like a structure, like something monumental in human history. So these are actually based on the Montessori ideas connected to the parsing, but we're going in a slightly different direction. So the first thing we have to always ask when we have a sentence is, what is the verb? So I'm going to put a sentence up here, and I want you to try to identify what the verb is. The dog ate the food. Pretty simple sentence. Can you identify the verb? Hopefully you can. Because the first question we always ask is, what is the verb? We are going to go step by step and break down exactly what's going on in this sentence. What is the verb? Who can tell me what the verb is? See a 3rd grader, 4th grader, 5th grader somewhere out there. You're probably telling me that the verb is ate. That is correct. Ate is the verb. However, that is the answer to the question, but that's not the element of the sentence. Now, normally, if this was parsing sentence to symbol, we would say, hey, that's a verb. And that is correct. That is a verb. But in logical analysis, sentence analysis, it gets a little more complicated. We're going to call this the predicate. So there you have the predicate of the sentence. What is the verb? The verb is ate. That is the predicate of the sentence. All right, so we have to continue logically breaking down this sentence. What is our next question? Can you think for a second? We have an action. Now we have to find the doer of this action, right? So the question we're going to ask is, you have it? That's right. What ate? What ate? Now, I'm using the neuter pronoun, or the neuter interrogative pronoun here, because we don't know if this is a male dog, female dog. We have no idea. If this was Coco ate the food, and we know that Coco is a boy, dog, we might say who ate. But typically with animals, we're going to use the neuter here, what. So what ate? And the answer is dog. So we have dog ate, okay? Very basic. We have the question, we have the answer. Now let's get to the element of the sentence. What is that? Well, every sentence has to have, I said it earlier in this presentation, every sentence has to have a predicate, the action, but something doing the action, and that is that's right, you said it, the subject. Now, give yourself a round of applause, because I tell the kids this all the time. No matter what, you're already almost all the way done. Because if you can identify the subject of a sentence and the predicate of a sentence, then you are good to go. Because those are the fundamental basics. Everything else is just gravy. Now we're going to find out, we're going to do something else here to find out what the dog ate, right? So we have to actually ask another question. That question is, I think you just heard me say it, that's right. What did the dog eat? What did the dog eat? You have the answer for me? That's right, food. Now, we can look in that and say, well, Mr. Adam, that is a noun. That's true, and so is dog. Dog is a common noun, food is a common noun. However, with respect to logical analysis, we're going to do something else, okay? This is the thing receiving the action. We have the action itself, the thing doing the action, and we have, in this case, the thing receiving the action. And in grammar, we call that the direct object. So, the dog ate the food. Now, some of you might be saying, well, what about the? What about the, Mr. Adam? Well, kids, when it comes to logical analysis, the, a, and the, we're typically not going to put those up here on the board. Okay, we are looking for the fundamental elements of the sentence with respect to their actions, not parts of speech anymore. That's parsing. This is with respect to what they're doing in the sentence. Adjectives as attributives, we would put those up there. What kind of? Okay, we'll get to that. But as far as this one here, that's where we're at. Now, I'm going to give you guys a little bonus here, because third graders, you're going to be doing this, and fourth graders, you're going to need to review, and fifth graders and up. So it's always good to review. I'm going to give you the sentence diagram for this as well. So think about this as intro to logical analysis plus a little bit of sentence diagramming. Okay, so let me erase what I've got up here, make sure we have that down, and I'm going to put up a diagram that goes with the dog ate the food. Sentence diagramming works like this. That is the fundamental structure. You would always have your subject here and your predicate here. So subject here, predicate here. In this case, dog is our subject, ate is our predicate. Okay? What do we do with food? Well, we're going to do a little thing called the direct object line here. Congratulations, you're mostly done. Everything else now is just modifiers. The dog ate the food. We're very clear. We know what the action is. We know what the subject, the doer of the action is. And we know what the direct object receiving the action is. So that's just a little bonus for you. Eventually, we'll probably do some more presentations on this. I've got an 8th grader who loves teaching this. Hopefully he might want to actually try and do this for us. Anyway, subject, predicate, direct object. Let's go to another logical analysis. Here we go. The hungry caterpillar crawled away. Okay, so the hungry caterpillar crawled away. It's a little more complex sentence. Okay, we've got perhaps some other parts of speech here, we'll see. But we always start with the very first question. And you know what that question is? Say it all with me. What is the verb? That's right. What is the verb is always the first question. We are looking for that action. Okay, that is the most important question we can ask of any sentence. Okay, the answer is, that's right, you said it, crawled. That is an action. I'm not going to do it now, but I could crawl across the floor here like a little caterpillar. Okay, big, ugly, not cute caterpillar, but caterpillar nonetheless. Crawled. Okay, so question, what is the verb? Answer, crawled. Element, I think you know it. Look at the other example that I just gave you. That's right, element is the predicate. So you are looking at the predicate right now, okay? So what is the verb crawled? Predicate, all right? What's the next question that we ask? Well, we gotta know what's crawling, don't we? So let's ask that question. With me, what crawled? What crawled? And we know the answer to that is, that's right, caterpillar. So we have the question, what is the verb crawled? We have what crawled, the caterpillar. But what element of the sentence is that? Well, if you look at the previous example that we just did, you're going to know that that is the subject. That is the thing doing the action. What is doing the crawling? It's the caterpillar. Okay, so now we have some other questions to ask. The first sentence I gave you, we had a direct object that was receiving the action. Here, I'm not so sure. Let's look at the sentence and ask the right questions. Who knows what the right question to ask is? You got it? Well, if you said, what kind of caterpillar, you would be correct. What kind of caterpillar do we have? It sounds like a Mr. Adam kind of caterpillar, because Mr. Adam's always hungry too, right? It's a hungry caterpillar. And then the element of the sentence, in this case, we could put attributive, we could put an adjective. Here, I'm a little less of a stickler than some Montessorians. I typically would put adjective here. And I might even put just descriptive adjective, because we know that there are different kinds of adjectives. So I'm going to go ahead and write descriptive adjective under element here. Okay, that is our descriptive adjective. Okay, looks like I'm looking at the Schoolhouse Rock. We got to unpack our adjectives. We're unpacking this adjective right here. Hungry. What kind of caterpillar? Hungry. Well, let's move on to a final question. We have one other question we need to ask of this sentence to fully analyze it logically. So do you know what that question is? I think I may have heard it in the ether out there somewhere. That's right. Where did the hungry caterpillar crawl? Where did the hungry caterpillar crawl? Okay, I see him over there somewhere. Where did he crawl? That's right. If you said away, you would be correct. Who can tell me what part of speech this is? I know a lot of you older kids know what this is. Third and fourth graders, this is what I call the cockroach of grammar. It's always showing up somewhere doing something in some interesting, fun way. That's right, it's an adverb. But in this case, this is actually an adverb of place where. because it's somewhere, it's away. So we're going to write adverb of place where. We're going to be as specific as possible. So adverb of place where. And there you have it for our second example. Our second example, we have introduced the attributive as well as the adverb of place where. And in fact, on my chart here, as you might be able to see, we have all sorts of questions we can ask of adverbs. And one of them is where. Okay, I promised to do a little sentence diagramming here as well. Third and fourth graders, this is a great way to get brushed up for moving forward. This is something that I like to teach, so I'm going to go ahead and diagram this sentence for you as well. And don't worry, kids, you can always go back and pause the video if you need to see what's on the board here. If I'm moving too fast in the video, you can always pause and you can always write down. Okay, that's actually one of the nice things about the live stream. Well, not in this case, the recording that we're doing. So here we go. Oh no, I started it exactly the same way. That's right, because for these simple sentences, they're always going to start like this. Okay, what is our subject? What is our predicate? Who can tell me what goes right here? Did you say caterpillar? You're right. Okay, so that's our subject. What about our predicate? Who can tell me what our predicate is? Say it. Crawled? That would be it. Congratulations, you're mostly done. Okay, everything else is gravy here. Okay, we've got modifiers. Now, what you saw in the last one I diagrammed was how I put the underneath. The and a and an articles are technically adjectives. They're attributives. They give a little extra information. The way you diagram them is very simple. The hungry caterpillar crawled. Now, we've got a predicate here. Okay, it's just the verb right now. What I'm going to do is same thing here for my adverb of place where. The hungry caterpillar crawled away. The hungry and away are all modifiers. These two modify our subject. This adverb modifies our predicate. And remember, that's what adverbs do. The job of an adverb is to modify or describe a verb, but it can also modify or describe an adjective or another adverb. I'll give you an example like that maybe some other time. Adjectives, as we know, modify nouns. So let's do another one, and then we'll start talking about follow-ups. Joe and I walked to the park today. This seems to be a little more complicated, but as you're going to see, kids, this is not that much more complicated. I'm just going to throw a little bit out there for you and giving you a little bit to work with. Parents, this is actually going to be helpful for you too, because once you see some of the patterns with adverbs, adjectives, and some other things we're doing here, it's going to be a lot easier for you to sort of help the kids with their follow-ups at home. And remember, you can always email me your students' work. Take a picture. Take a picture of it, email it to me. I'm going to get Google Classroom set up. We're going to be doing it that way. Joe and I walked to the park today. What's the first question we always ask? That's right. What is the verb? And what is the verb? Do you know? That's right, it's the action word in the sentence. In this case, that is walked. And as I'm sure you can tell by now, we're establishing a pattern. It looks like the element is going to be, I hear predicate out there? That is correct. Okay, that is your predicate. Okay, great. So walked. We have our action. We have the powerful action that we need, right? So what is the verb walked? Element is predicate. Next question. Got it? Who walked? That's right. Who walked? And the answer to the question, who walked? I walked to the park today, but Joe also walked to the park today. What am I going to do? Well, what I'm going to do is realize that this is a compound subject. And this is Joe and I, because that is true. Joe and I did in fact walk to the park. And you heard me say it, this is called a compound predicate. Compound means more than one. Don't make it more complicated than what it is. If it was Joe, Bob, and I, Joe, Jeff, and I, same thing. Compound predicate, two or more. Okay? Compound subject. Compound subject. Okay. Congratulations. We got most of it. Joe and I walked. That's a sentence, folks. We've got most of it done. Okay? The rest is the gravy part. Let's figure out what's going on. What's the next question that we can ask? You have it? Did you ask the question, where did Joe and I walk? If you did, that would be correct. Where did Joe and I walk? And the answer is, well, to the park, obviously. Right? So we walked to the park. Now, as for the answer to this, the element for this one, there are two ways of going about this. This could be an adverbial phrase or a prepositional phrase. That's right. A lot of you know from parsing that words like under, with, by, through, beneath, around, etc. These kinds of words that show relationships in some sort of way are prepositions. But what we usually don't remember is that they're actually on their own, they're adverbs. Okay? So he stood up. He stood up. Up in that case would be an adverb. He walked up the stairs. In that case, because it's got stuff with it, a phrase, that would make it a preposition. So we could either call this element an adverbial phrase, or we could call it a prepositional phrase. Okay? And again, it's answering one of these questions. So I'm going to write both for now. Okay, so prepositional phrase, adverbial clause, phrase. I'm pretty flexible with those. When it gets to prepositional phrases and adverbs, you have to be flexible because that's how grammar works when you get into the adverb realm. All right, so we have Joe and I walked to the park. We have one more question to ask of our sentence. You know it? That's right. When did Joe and I walk to the park? When did Joe and I walk to the park? That's the next question. Logically follows when we examine the sentence. So what is the answer to this question? If you said today, you would be correct. So Joe and I walked to the park today. And this is, who knows it? That's right, it's an adverb of time. And in fact, it's a funny story in our parsing, and one of our students came up with a way to do an adverb of time to make it look like a clock. It's pretty interesting. So today is an adverb of time. It answers the question, when. All right? So, Joe and I walked to the park today. What is the verb? Walked. Predicate. Who walked? Joe and I. Compound subject. Where did Joe and I walk? To the park. Prepositional phrase, adverbial phrase. When did Joe and I walk to the park? Today. Adverb of time. Pretty self-explanatory. A little more advanced, but it does introduce the prepositional phrase for you 3rd and 4th graders. Now I'll give you the sentence diagram. This one is going to start a little bit differently because it has what is called a compound subject. And you guys will see what this looks like. It looks kind of like that because we have our predicate walked. You can tell me what goes here. At this point, you probably can tell. Yeah, that's right. Joe, I. And what we like to do is we like to draw a little dotted line there for our conjunction, and. So if you've got this, Joe, Joe and I walked, congratulations. Everything else, modifiers. Let me show you how a prepositional phrase works, and then we'll do the adverb of time as well. Prepositional phrases are a little more difficult, and they can be more difficult, but this is a simple one, and let me show you how it works. This first line here is where the preposition goes. The flat line there is the object of the preposition, and the slanted line is any modifiers that modify the object of that preposition. So we have to be very careful here and make sure we put the words on the right line. Parents of 3rd and 4th graders, be very careful. Make sure that you pay attention here because this is where some kids might get tripped up. To park. The park. To the park. Preposition, object, modifier. Today, easy, because that is an adverb modifying walked. So a little extra there for those of you that want to have a little sentence diagramming to go with your logical analysis. Like I said, this is extra, but I'm trying to get content out there. And I love sentence diagramming. Sentence diagramming is a lot of fun, and you can always connect it to your logical analysis. Presentation is almost time to finish, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put follow-up sentences on the board for everybody to do. I would encourage older students to make more complex sentences, challenge yourselves, but as Mr. Matt and I get ready to start putting presentations for different cohorts, the presentations we're doing this week are more for the entire groups to just get us some practice as we get better at this. So what I'm going to be asking you to do is at home, with the printout that I'm sending to your parents, or on a piece of paper, I'm going to ask you to try to write out all the steps and do the sentence logical analysis on this sheet for these 3 sentences that I'm going to give you. I'm also going to give you a little extra credit if you want to try to find a way to do the sentence diagrams for these. All right, so here we go. The first sentence is, a cat meowed quietly. Aww. The silly dog ate the cat food. Silly, silly dog. What are you doing eating the cat food? What are we going to do? But this one is a little more difficult. This is a little bit easier than this one. The last one is a little more personal. Matt and I did a live stream today. Okay?